Hello and welcome back to Comics Over Time. This season, which we're calling Murdock and Marvel, a history of Marvel Comics starring Daredevil, we're breaking down the year in the comic book industry in two parts. In part one, we'll look at the state of the comic book industry as a whole, as well as what things were going on in society that may have impacted the comic book industry during that year. We'll talk big picture about what's going on at DC and independent comics, then we'll shift our focus to Marvel. We'll look at who is creating comics, what new characters or storylines were introduced, and which comics debuted or ended. In part 2, we'll dive deep into Marvel's longest-running characters, Matt Murdock. We'll look at what the year had in store for the Man Without Fear, key things that happened, and who joined or left his world before spotlighting one key issue or story. From there, we'll wrap up the year's discussion with a takeaway before moving on to another year and a whole new discussion. We're excited to have you join us on a trip through comic book history. We are back with another new year. It is 2022 as we get closer and closer to present day. My name is Dwayne, and with me, as always, is my good buddy Dan. Dan, how you doing?
Doing really well. It's been a busy week, a lot going on, but got a chance to go and hang out and review a few comic books that still felt pretty fresh in the memory because it hasn't been that long since we read them the first time. So,
right.
There we go.
It's definitely going to be interesting talking about some of these now because we did talk about some of this when we were looking at Moon Knight, but now we get to look at it from a different hero's point of view and one who had a much bigger impact on the crossover that we're going to be talking about. And there's a bunch of movies that had varying degrees of success this year as well. And as you pointed out before we started recording, there definitely seemed to be a much different view about comic book adaptations on TV and movies from where the year started to where the year ended.
Yeah, it's kind of a watershed year in some ways that way. So we'll talk about that at the end. It's hard to really do any kind of long-term takeaways when we're getting this close to present day, but we'll try in the takeaway to talk a little bit about that. So see how it goes.
All right, so set the stage for us here before we jump in and talk about the year in comics. What's the lead in for 2022?
If you remember, 2021 set sort of an impossibly high standard
because
we gained like 60% over any previous year, right?
Yes.
So obviously there was going to be some sort of retrenchment.
Yes.
Unless there wasn't.
Oh, so the line could in fact possibly go up from there.
The line did go up, which was pretty cool. Not as much. We didn't gain another 60% of sales, but I think anybody in the industry would say that not having it fall back down as the pandemic started to sort of slow a little bit and people got out to do other things, not having a significant dip in sales and interest was a big victory.
Yeah, I would imagine so. All right, so with that, let's jump in and let's talk about what happened in 2022 in the year in comics. The year in comics. All right, Dan, I hinted at movies and TV shows. Why don't we start there as we usually do? It looks like there is a pretty substantial list of movie adaptations that we had this year. And then, if that wasn't enough, we had a pretty sizable amount of TV adaptations that debuted this year as well.
Yeah, it really was a busy year for pretty much everything comic related. And movies, TV shows, and of course then the books themselves. DC had a good year in a lot of ways. Well, in half the ways. They actually had the Batman, the new Batman, directed by Reeves, starring Robert Pattinson. Actually came out, did $775 million in box office. Did you go to that one? Or was it theaters?
I did see it. I did see it in the theater. It was not my favorite Batman, but it definitely was not a bad adaptation.
I didn't think it was bad. I did fall asleep, which is not exactly a rousing sort of advertisement for it, but I did actually fall asleep during the movie at one point. And I think that it was a little bit dreary, to be quite frank. But I don't really blame that on any of the characters or anything like that. I think it was just, that was kind of it had a more realistic and laid back sort of approach to it, and it just grayed me out.
It was dark. It was very moody, and if you weren't there was action, but it was very sparsely scattered throughout the runtime, and so there were definitely lulls. And if you were, maybe you were up a few extra hours that day or something, you go to the theater, I could definitely see how if you're in a comfy chair, you could fall asleep.
I did like the characterization of the Penguin. I thought that was really cool.
Oh yes,
I
definitely.
actually liked the Catwoman, the characterization. Yes. Pattinson, I'm not sold on entirely, but I didn't think he was bad at all. But in any case, $775 million. People liked it enough to give it $750 million at the box office. It did a lot better than some of the other DC movies.
Yes.
So
yes,
Black Adam.
I was gonna, and it's getting a sequel.
Yep, absolutely. That's always key. Black Adam, not getting a sequel.
No.
I actually liked a lot of parts of this movie. I liked the fact they had a lot of the Justice Society folks in there. I think it was a cool sort of idea in some ways. But Black Adam is a villain, and the fact that Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, decided he didn't want to be the villain, so essentially they redid the whole thing to just make him the star, kind of. It's just not a really good movie. It was not a good movie.
It was really tough to because not knowing anything about Black Adam and going and watching that film in the theater, I had trouble following who these people were that were on the screen and why I should be rooting for them. And it seemed like Black Adam, the Rock's character, was trying to be the good guy, and he definitely was the focal point of the story. But by the end of it, I wasn't really that much more invested in the character than I was going into it, which was not invested in the slightest. So that's not great.
Yep. Terrible reviews. So-so box office, especially for a movie with Dwayne Johnson as the star. Did not get a sequel. Black Adam was not a success. DC had another one that I think was a pretty decent success. They did a League of Super Pets movie that pulled in $270 million. That was an animated, a kid's film. For people that weren't DC, there was actually a Dark Horse, sort of like a kid's book called Chicken Hare and the Hamster of Darkness that got turned into a movie. We had The Bad Guys, which was based on essentially more of a kid's animated or illustrated book that pulled $250 million. Something called Corrective Measures was interesting. It was based on a graphic novel from Arcana, starred Michael Rooker and Bruce Willis.
Really?
And its total box office, if you're seeing this on the document,
oh my God,
$34,489.
I thought that had to have been a misprint.
How is it possible unless it was a misprint somewhere, how is it possible for something starring Bruce Willis, one of the most bankable actors of the last 20, 30, 40 years, to make $34,000? That's just insane.
I mean, I will say this. I have no idea what this is because I do not remember seeing anything about it in the slightest.
I didn't know it existed until I was looking up movies that came out this year. So There you go. We also had one called Marry Me, which was based on a webcomic. Pulled in a very respectable $56 million against a low budget. Sly Stallone did a movie called Samaritan based on a Mythos Comics property that made $100 million. I don't think that made any money, but still, for something I've never heard of that was a comic project, it's a substantially more than on $34,000. So
yes, I do think I remember seeing a trailer or something for the Samaritan.
There you go.
That does ring a bell.
Yeah. So, and then we get to Marvel, which had you'd call it an up and down year, but really it's mostly an up year because $860 million for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which of course was this elegiac sort of movie that we spent the first half of it sort of mourning Chadwick Boseman, and then the second half they're trying to build up Shuri as a character. Unfortunately, the actress had made some controversial statements and the like, and there were also just some other questions about things. The movie was actually pretty good. And again, almost $1 billion. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness came out, made $955 million. That, of course, was coming right off of the WandaVision TV show, and was essentially a movie that co-starred the Scarlet Witch. A lot of money, still a lot of excitement because you're getting that many people there. But I think also this is where we really first started to see sort of that weariness of people about this very extended environment. Where now, in order to really know what was going on, you needed to have watched not only the Marvel MCU movies, but you needed to watch Sony movies. You needed to watch all the old X-Men movies. You needed to have kept up on all of the fan castings. It was simply too much, I think, for the average fan.
And now Disney Plus TV shows, because with the Scarlet Witch, she's the villain in this because of what happens in WandaVision. And if you haven't seen WandaVision, that makes no sense to you. And they didn't really do a whole lot in the film itself to really explain what happens. So if you didn't see that, you were just sort of left trying to figure that out on the fly.
This was Marvel at the height of its hubris, where they're like, we expect you to have watched all this stuff.
Yes.
Don't bother us. We can't slow down. We also had one last one. Thor: Love and Thunder came out. And again, the poorly animated goats and some of the other stuff and everything. This one, some people loved it, and I will put myself in that camp. I really enjoyed this movie. I think it was a lot of fun. Some people absolutely hated it. But I think whether you enjoyed it or not, it's fair to at least acknowledge that Marvel was taking a lot of shortcuts. It was obvious that this movie showed the strain of trying to make 3 or 4 blockbuster films every year and do it in a process where they were constantly iterating and trying to get all of these guest stars shoved in and make this sausage as quickly as they can, essentially. And so it was unfortunate. And then we have, I think, the movie that defines 2022 and the years that follow for many of us.
That's not great. That's not great when you say which one this is.
So we all know it. We all love it. Morbius came out this year. Not once, but twice.
That's and right. So, it did come out twice. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Failing both times. So Jared Leto, it was, again, if you went into this like I did, having already seen all of the critics say that it's the worst thing that's ever been made and that it's a travesty and whatever, it's an enjoyable enough terrible movie. But it really is like a B movie that would have been made, for $150,000 back in the 80s or something like this. It is nowhere near as good as the first Blade movie, which was made on a budget of about 1/100th, probably, right?
The thing about this film that just absolutely kills me is the fact that it just bombed so spectacularly the first time, yet that there then started to be this groundswell on social media that caused them to try re-releasing it because they thought it would do better, and then it just bombed again. Is just actually just the craziest thing I have ever seen.
Never trust the internet. So, yep, it was Morbin time. But it was not Morbin time.
It was not Morbin time. What was going on TV? Tell me it's got to be better than this.
So, no. I mean,
jeez.
DC had a couple of things. They had Naomi come out, which is kind of about a girl who was interested in superheroes and the like, and ended up having powers herself. Only got 1 season. We had Peacemaker come out, which is one of the more successful shows of the last few years. A lot of people really like Peacemaker. It's very self-referential, and it came out and sort of made fun of the superhero genre at a time when the superhero genre was ripe to be made fun of.
Yes.
And I think that really helped.
Right? Yes. And it's still going.
Oh yeah, still going. doing really well. DMZ from Vertigo, Sandman from Vertigo came out. Both of those. DMZ was actually a miniseries. It's just this apocalyptic show, 4 episodes. Sandman had 2 seasons that it got. Probably would have continued if it hadn't been for all of Gaiman's projects getting canceled. I actually liked Sandman with one caveat, and that was when it was announced, I literally was talking to people and said, the only thing I hope is that they skip the whole Corinthian issue, because the Corinthian's creepy and I hate him, and I don't want to have to see that in live action.
Right. And
the entire first season is basically, hey, let's do a deep dive on the Corinthian. And it completely freaked me out.
Okay.
So I'm not a fan of that. Surfside Girls came out from IDW, kind of like a tween teen kind of show. Tales of the Walking Dead, a spin-off of The Walking Dead, came out from Image. And then we had 3 Marvel shows that came out in 2022, all of which I actually enjoyed.
Yeah.
But your opinion, your mileage may vary, dear
right.
listener. Moon Knight, deeply cerebral and confusing and meta type of show, which especially in retrospect, I think if there was one show that you would spend 3 or 4 months reading comics to get ready for, Moon Knight may have been the one to do it on.
Yes.
Because it was so very deep in the mythologies and everything else. And I thought it was really cool. I love Moon Knight, obviously. We did the whole podcast on it. I loved that show. And I enjoy it more every time I go back again.
Yeah.
Ms. Marvel came out. I don't know if you watched Ms. Marvel.
Definitely did. It was fun. I actually really enjoyed it. And again, not a character I was overly familiar with, because at that time I would kind of stuck only to Moon Knight comics, because that's what we had read to that point. But the character is fun. They casted it really well for the show, and then the story made sense even for somebody that didn't have a background in the character.
Yep. And I think it was a bit of a palate cleanser in terms of, it was a Marvel show that didn't follow necessarily all of the normal Marvel sort of beats. It was a little bit different, so that was good. And then we have the last and by far the most sort of
divisive,
contentious and divisive of them, and that is She-Hulk, which some people absolutely hated, some people absolutely loved. It probably did itself no favors in terms of it directly collided with sort of the misogyny that was going on the internet, even in the stuff that it did in its own story. Like, basically, internet trolls were the bad guy of the entire season, right?
Yes, they were.
So, I mean, it definitely took it on. I enjoyed that. I thought it was a cool, interesting take. But it actually did obviously have its problems as well. A lot of people who were big Daredevil fans from, say, the Netflix show did not love the way that Disney brought back Daredevil in his first appearance since the Netflix shows. And I get that. I mean, obviously, we probably could even talk a little bit about, that's a big part of Daredevil for this year, is the She-Hulk show. That's his, his first MCU appearance.
Yeah.
So,
I liked it. I felt like the adaptation felt very true to now. Having read some She-Hulk comics, it felt very much like a live action version of the comics, with the fourth wall breaking and sort of the meta jokes and everything. And I actually thought it was rather ingenious to have basically internet trolls be the bad guy throughout all this, and loved it. And the whole final episode, the way she ends up talking to the computer about how this was going to end, I thought was actually just really, really great, and something unexpected from Marvel going into a TV show like this.
Yep. It was a little unfair to treat our man Matt like such a little himbo Lothario, though. I mean, he's never been like that.
Is it
he's
really?
Never been like
because
that.
we read the comics. So
would he just sleep around with, random superheroines. Would he do that? So, all right, yes, he'd do that. It was a spot-on characterization of Matt Murdock. And actually, more specifically, it was a spot-on impersonation of Matt Murdock during the Wade run.
Yes.
Really, if you think about, like, when they were doing the lighter version of Daredevil during the Wade run, that is dead solid perfect on it. So that's kind of those. Overall in the market, like we talked about, comics actually came in at $2.16 billion this year. That was up 4% from where they were last year. $1.57 billion of that is in graphic novels, $435 million in comics, $155 million digital. Basically, all of the growth was in additional sales of graphic novels. Comic sales and digital sales were pretty much flat. Both the direct market, though, and the book channel did go up. So direct market did actually experience gains this year. So it wasn't just that it was selling the graphic novels in bookstores. It's that even people making it to the comic stores were increasingly choosing graphic novel or trade paperback formats over the floppy formats. The other thing that's interesting, I put in, you can see them here, a couple of graphics about the number of actual comic book releases. And one of the interesting thing is that from 2015 to 2022, the number of actual different books that Marvel, DC, Image, all of them puts out is actually gone down.
Yeah. The
number by publishers other than the top 5 or 6 main publishers we know about have gone up by probably 20% or something like that. And frighteningly, somebody who's kind of tired of variants, if you look at the other one, in 2018 there were 5,000 different comic book versions released to shops and 5,800 variants, meaning essentially there was about one variant cover for every regular comic book.
Right.
In 2022 there were 4,700, so less comics, but 11,398 variants, meaning essentially
almost
2.5 to 3 variants for every regular issue.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a lot.
That is.
That's a lot. So, I mean, then, 2.5 to 3 variants plus the original, meaning there's 3.5 to 4 versions of every comic book shipped on average.
I love the fact that gets so much more art out there, but good gosh, if you are, trying to find the one that you want and then, just needing to, if you want them all, it would just be so difficult.
And what makes it worse for me is if I'm at a convention or something and I'm looking for a book that I'm missing, I used to be able to know I had this cover or that cover or whatever, but now there's no way to know whether you have a book without keeping an actual diary of it or having an online collection guide, because
there's too many.
Too many, the chance you would recognize whether you have this variant or not when you're looking. It'd be really easy to get books you don't want. But, so anyways, a good year in comics, a bad year if you're sick of variants. And this is something that's been getting worse every year, by the way. So, and has showed no signs of stopping, including the fact that now we're getting things like recently this last week, Ultimates, the new Ultimates #1 released. Or Ultimate Universe #1, whatever it's called, the final part. And it not only had all of these variant covers, which were then polybagged, but within that, there were special variant covers as well. So there could be hundreds of different versions of this book out there.
Yeah, to say that this is, just looking at this chart, it is accelerated rapidly over the last 3 years. If you look at, you were talking about a 1-to-1 ratio, basically. In 2018, it was basically 2-to-1 in 2020 when they did 3,800 and there was 6,300 variants to 2.5-to-1 in 2021, 4,400 to 9,500 variant covers to now this of almost 2.5 to almost 3-to-1. It is crazy how quickly it has ramped up over the last 3 years.
Yep, it's kind of crazy. Not liking it. But there we go. So, outside of that, comic news, I didn't see a whole lot. I don't want to go too deep into things, but just a couple big bullets. Aftershock filed for bankruptcy, and there were a number of other companies that sort of were on shaky ground, because what we're finding is that with Diamond having problems, they're not necessarily always paying everybody when they need to be, or other things are happening within the supply chains. Also, there's some companies that just didn't have particularly good financials, and the whole problem of trying to keep things going through the pandemic is causing them trouble, even though sales are going up for most folks. Dark Horse got the Star Wars for Kids stuff back. Marvel, or Disney, of course, is keeping the regular Star Wars stuff within its own line. Blockchain and crypto problems, a number of people say, might have been the reason why things started to go down for some of the secondary markets and the like this year.
Okay.
So you had things like the NFTs and all that sort of stuff. A lot of those bubbles burst. And a lot of people do think, and I think it's probably true, that the reason why comic art and comics and magic cards and everything just went through the roof in the early 2020s is not only people had a bunch of money, but a lot of the early crypto folks were hardcore geeks. And when they suddenly unexpectedly made $5 million, they dumped it all into the stuff they'd been wanting to buy their entire life but hadn't had the money to.
Sure.
And the prices on that stuff just went crazy. So as that goes down, we're seeing a little bit of the collectibles market cool, and comics were a big part of that. And we did start also seeing some renewed censorship pushes in a lot of libraries and the like this year, and that's going to continue on as well. One of the books that came out or has been out recently that specifically had ban attempts is something called Genderqueer, which is a graphic novel from Oni that's gotten ban attempts in a number of states and different library systems. But there's actually a massive just string of books now that have been challenged or outright attempted to be banned at various places across the United States. So we're going to be seeing this a lot more over the next few years as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about notable passings. There is a big list, unfortunately, this year, isn't there?
Yeah, and I just listed a bunch of folks. We can't talk about all of them, but there's a couple of big British creators. Alan Grant and Kevin O'Neill passed away. Carlos Pacheco, a Spanish comic artist who I absolutely loved the art of. It's just so beautiful. Died at age 60 in 2022. Aline Kaminsky-Crumb, the wife of Robert Crumb, died. She was 74. Had been an artist working on her own on a lot of comics, and then also had collaborated with her husband on a number of comics. She's been a real force in sort of women's underground comics of the 60s, 70s, and onward. Tom Palmer, somebody that we've seen quite a lot of. He's an inker, fantastic inker that's worked for Marvel for a long time. Tom Veitch, who is an artist who did a bunch of graphic novels and stuff back in the 80s that I really liked. He had a really kind of cool, sketchy, sort of punkish kind of style that I really enjoyed. Then we get to Tim Sale, a guy I really loved the art of. Just a fantastic comic artist. He did Batman: The Long Halloween, Superman for All Seasons, a bunch of other stuff. Had a very, really interesting, distinctive style with heavy blacks and shadows and stuff like this.
We read some Daredevil of Loeb and Sale.
Absolutely. Daredevil Yellow was Loeb and Sale. Yep. So really good stuff. And then we had the two giants. Titans of the industry, yes. We had a few years ago, like Stan Lee and Ditko, I think, passed in the same year. And for some people, that would have been about as rough a year as you could get. 2022 is worse for me, because these literally are my two favorite comic creators. George Perez, comic book artist who worked on Avengers, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Teen Titans. Absolutely just a fantastic creator all along the board. His art as penciler was amazing. His inks were outstanding, but a lot of times they wouldn't let him ink just because all of his little ruffle and stuff took so long. He couldn't get his work done. So he had a number of people like Romeo Tangle and other really good compatible inkers. But Perez is just amazing, and he was a writer as well. He wrote things like the Wonder Woman books for years, kind of revitalized that character, brought a lot of deep mythology in and stuff. So he's just an absolute giant to the industry. And then
and I was just gonna say, and people that have listened from the beginning know that I didn't jive with George Perez immediately upon some of the first comic books that I read. I think I read like a Planet Hulk book or something, if I remember right. That was his. That I recognize game when I see it. It just it isn't necessarily like my go-to the way it is you.
Yeah, I was past imperfect, I think. So
yes,
interesting one. Yes, this is sometimes even people you know for years, you just can't understand them in certain things, and this is something I never understand.
yes.
But we do have one other who, again, this is a guy who just defined my love of comics from the time I was young. Before Bill Sienkiewicz drew his Demon Bear and sort of redefined for me everything about what I thought comic art could do, Neil Adams had been the guy who was the one who defined everything that comic art should be, right? When I first started collecting, I found reprints of his Green Lantern, Green Arrow stuff. I started collecting the originals, started collecting a lot of his original Batman stuff. They also were available in some digest books that I could get every once in a while. And essentially, for the most part, for me and a lot of people my age and even a little longer, Neil Adams essentially defined what comic art should look like. Besides that, though, he was a great guy. He was somebody who was always working to make the industry better, to make conditions better for creators. He went to bat for a lot of the old creators who had trouble getting any kind of money or rights out of the companies they created characters for. Famously, in fact, even before the Superman movie, helping Siegel and Schuster to sort of wrangle actual benefits finally back out of DC after years of trying. So, great guy, great artist. He did all sorts of work in the industry, had his own company for a long time as well. I got to meet him a couple times. Really nice dude. George Perez and Neil Adams. That's 2022 is a tough year for American comics.
Yeah, that's rough. All right, let's briefly talk about Marvel. They had a big year.
I guess we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff really going on in Marvel, just because Devil's Reign is one of the big events of the year. There also is a Judgment Day event, Avengers Assemble, Dark Web, all of were going on. Interestingly, it's tough to tell who the new characters were that are going to matter at this point. The one I want to mention, just for those who followed us over from Moon Knight, is Layla El-Faloui. Made her debut in the comics this year, late in the year after the TV show.
After the TV show, yes. The Harley Quinn effect, as it were.
Yep.
Yes, very nice. All right, let's talk about the Eisners this year. What was the award-winning books from 2022?
So just a few of them. Tom Taylor won Best Continuing Series for Nightwing and Best Limited Series for The Human Target. Chip Zdarsky, our man who's writing Daredevil right now, also got Best New Series with Public Domain, which if you ever get a chance to track it down, it is fantastic. It's kind of a very different sort of book, but really, really good. That was for Image. Best Publication for Early Readers, a favorite around the Newland household, was always a guy named Mo Willems, and his book, The Pigeon Will Ride the Roller Coaster, came out this year and won Best Publication for Early Readers.
Very nice.
My wife has met Mo Willems, and I've driven him around Fargo when he was speaking at one of our schools. So we know Mo around here. Best Publication for Teens was Do a Powerbomb by Daniel Warren Johnson, which is interesting because at this point he was doing sort of things that were, wrestling related, things that were a little bit more on the non-mainstream side.
Okay.
He's at a lot of the conventions I go to, and so I've listened to him a couple times talk about making comics and stuff like that. He then got into doing a lot of the stuff now with like the Transformers universe and stuff over the last couple of years, and has just taken off as a creator. But even back in 2022, he's winning Eisners. Kate Beaton's Ducks, 2 Years in the Oil Sands, won for Best Graphic Memoir. Best Adaptation from Another Medium, Chivalry, by Neil Gaiman, adapted by Colleen Doran. Everybody, I think, feels really bad for Colleen Doran on this one, because just as this came out and a little after it won the award, but before it really was able to rack up probably huge sales, a lot of the stuff started coming out, and that's really sort of put a little bit of a dump in this. But just remember, Colleen did the work on this, so it's her Eisner, not his Eisner, and we're fine. We can enjoy it. Best webcomic, Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe won that one.
Again?
Yep, again. Best writer, James Tinian IV, who is, I think, also won, if not best writer, a number of other awards. Greg Smallwood won the best penciler or penciler inker. He, of course, also has done stuff in Moon Knight that we...
Yes, I recognize the name.
Best colorist, Jordi Belair, also a Moon Knight veteran.
Also recognize that name as well as our letterer.
As well as Stan Sakai, who has been around forever doing things and winning his awards. The best comics related periodical was Panel X Panel by Hassan Atsmani Elayu and Tiffany Babb. Best comics related book, Charles M. Schultz, The Art and Life of the Peanuts Creator in 100 Objects, which was actually done by the Schultz Museum, which I've been to the Schultz Museum. It's fantastic. If you ever get a chance to go there, absolutely just an amazing place. And best academic scholarly work is the LGBTQ plus Comic Studies Reader, Critical Openings, Future Directions, edited by Allison Halsall and Jonathan Warren. This is another of those University Press of Mississippi books. They're all fantastic. This one was pretty crunchy. Like, even from the title, you can tell it's going to be a very academic book. But almost anything they put out is worth reading. So congrats to them and University Press.
All right, let's talk about the Hall of Fame then for this year. Judges' choices.
I'm not even going to talk about the judges' choices. I'm just going to say their names.
There's a lot of them here, isn't there?
Jerry Bales, Tony DeZuniga, Justin Green, Bill Griffith, Jay Jackson, Jeffrey Catherine Jones, Jack Katz, Aline Kaminsky-Crum, Wynn Mortimer, Diane Newman, Gasper Saladino, Kim Thompson, Gary Trudeau, Mort Walker, and Tatjana Wood.
That is a huge list.
A number of people in there I really like. But let's just go to the Voiders' choices because there's fewer of them, so we can actually talk about them a little. Brian Boland goes in. Fantastic creator. His Camelot 3000 was sort of one of the first books that I purchased directly from comic stores because it came out in a format where you couldn't get it at the newsstand, so I had to go hunt them down. Really, really a great sort of like science fiction / fantasy book. And Boland then went on to do covers for just about every DC comic for the next 20-some years. He also was involved in the book I hate the most of any comic that's ever been made. So there you go.
Really? Okay.
Yes, he was the artist on the Killing Joke, which actually goes on many people's list of top comics ever. To me, it's an absolute piece of trash that I would just throw in a corner and cover up with stuff so I never have to see it again. Ann Nesenti went in. Ann Nesenti was working with Chris Claremont and a lot of the Marvel folks at on the X-Men team for a long time, doing writing and editing. She created a character called Longshot, and I really enjoyed the Longshot stories. She also had a long run on Daredevil that we read through. So the Nesenti era was for sort of the mid part of the 90s. So she's a very, very worthy entry into the Hall. Tim Sale, as we talked about, he passed away this year, and he also went into the Hall this year. His art is just sublime. Diana Schutz is our last one. She was an editor at Comico and also at Dark Horse, who worked on a lot of Frank Miller's sort of most important independent works there. Things like 300 and Sin City and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a massive class going into the Hall of Fame this year. A lot of really good creators.
Yeah, that is quite the list. Dan, before we move on and talk about Daredevil, what would you say was your favorite comic this year?
I will just go with public domain because I think in actual fact I really did love that series, and it's a good one to just give a little bit of a bump to. So public domain was pretty fantastic.
All right. Sounds good. Well, that is a look at what was going on in comics, but we still have a lot to talk about with the year in Daredevil. So without further ado, why don't we jump in and talk about what happened to the Hornhead himself. Year in Daredevil.
Okay, Dwayne. So looking at this list, you have a bunch of books, a bunch of creators. Tell me a little bit about what all's going on here with Daredevil this year.
Yes, so we had the end of Volume 6. We have the big crossover event that Daredevil is a big focal point of, Devil's Reign. And we had the start of a new volume, Volume 7, that happens towards the end of the year. We also had a follow-up book to Devil's Reign called Omega 1 that we're going to talk about as well. But outside of that, like, he actually doesn't have a ton of other appearances, but there's still a lot to talk about with Daredevil this year. Chip Zdarsky doing the writing on most of it. He got some help from Rodney Barnes and Jim Zub on that Omega book, but otherwise, this is all Chip Zdarsky this year. Again, like, this is his like third year, I want to say, doing books for Daredevil at this point. Yep. Part of this second issue of Volume 7, which was like in October of this year, was the 650th issue if you're talking about legacy numbering. So it is a big oversized book with good gosh, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different artists that had some art as part of this. Guys like Alex Maleev, Phil Noto, Chris Samnee, Klaus Janson, Mike Hawthorne, John Romita Jr., along with Marco Checchetto, who's been kind of the guy with Chip Zdarsky throughout all this. But otherwise, you know, Checchetto was doing most of these books. We had Manuel Garcia and Rafael de Latorre, who did some books last year as well. So pretty consistent as far as the creative team again. Even though we ended a run, we had a big crossover event, and then we started another volume. We kind of kept the same creative team, which I kind of thought was a bit of a surprise, actually.
Yeah, it's weird how they're doing this repeatedly. I mean, Moon Knight did this as well, and like, why bother to start over?
Yeah,
what is the point?
I don't know. I honestly do not know. I don't know. I was hoping you could tell me, because it doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, the only thing that in this case makes some sense is they wanted to let Zdarsky and Checchetto do Devil's Reign as an event, and they didn't just want the event in Daredevil, they wanted it separate. So instead of then giving Daredevil another creative team, and they're just, let's just end it. We'll do 6 issues or whatever of this event, and then we'll start up a new Daredevil. Now, they could have just gone 10 and then started up 11 later, or 36 and gone to 37 later, but they decided they didn't want to. So they, I mean, that is what it appears they did in this case, is ended it so that those guys could do the big crossover.
Yeah.
And not have to fill in. But I don't know. Devil's Reign is essentially 6 issues of Daredevil.
Yes, it definitely is. Because it really is. It is, the focus is Daredevil, and the focus is Wilson Fisk, and those two have been going at each other for basically the entire Volume 6. So this picks up right where we left off, and so let's jump in and let's talk about this. So the year begins with the final book of that lockdown storyline we talked about in 2021. Issue 36, Fisk gets married to Typhoid Mary, and while at his summer home finds a secret file with information on Daredevil's secret identity, even if he can't actually read it or see who Daredevil's secret identity actually is. And what that leads us into is that big crossover event, Devil's Reign. It is altering. That's all I can say. Is it is a big event that actually takes place. There's 6 issues. There's books that go into other characters' titles, and there's follow-up books and everything like this. So much of the year for Daredevil is this crossover event. And so this is going to be the spotlight for this week. We're going to talk about that in deep detail because I think it's a really, really interesting story. As far as a crossover goes, I don't know if I loved Shadowland, but I will say I really liked Devil's Reign.
What's weird though in some ways is literally there have been other times that Daredevil has had just as many, it seems, other characters flopping in and out of it where they've just done it regularly in series. This was a crossover that could have been a regular issue, I think, to be quite frank.
It maybe could have, yeah.
Because there aren't even that many crossover books to go along with it,
Yeah, no, this is on the smaller side. We're talking about a 6-book run for the main sort of crossover event. There was, I think, if I'm looking at the numbers right, I think there only ended up being about 20 or 30 total books for the event itself. So it wasn't like this ridiculous, you need to read like 80 to 100 books or something like we've seen with some crossover events in the past.
25 total books.
Yeah.
And,
okay. Yeah.
6 of them are going to be the actual Devil's Reign. You've got some villains for hire, some X-Men, the Superior Four. That would be one of them, where kind of those, they did actually get 3 issues of their own during it. Moon Knight, we find out, is only participating for his own reasons and basically got himself intentionally thrown into jail so he could break people. So there was a few of those.
Yeah.
But other than that, it really was, there's not a whole lot there. And I would say that Devil's Reign Omega is essentially a 7th issue of Daredevil.
Yes, and so, we're going to talk about that right now because following Devil's Reign run that ends in June, in July we get an epilogue book called Devil's Reign Omega, and there are 3 stories in that that I think are really interesting. First, in Fall and Rise, Reed Richards tells Daredevil he believes Fisk has traveled to Latveria before everything pauses for Matt Murdock's funeral. With Kirsten delivering the eulogy and the Marvel cast quietly circling the truth. Foggy's grieving. Jessica Jones learns that Joe is alive, but warehoused in an orphanage. Joe being one of Kilgrave's kids. And Butch Ferris showing up just long enough to confirm he knows Mike's dead in Matt's place. And to ask the one question nobody seems to want to answer, which is, where actually is the real Matt Murdock? We also see Daredevil and Elektra watching the post-funeral scene outside, and when confronted by Luke Cage and Danny Rand, Matt says that being dead is the only way that he could leave New York and take the fight to the hand. A quick bank robbery stop turns awkward when the Thunderbolts arrive and remind everyone that Fisk may be gone, but the Powers Act and its authority is still very much not gone. The story ends with Jessica Jones freeing Joe from his inhibitor collar and takes responsibility for him. Kirsten quietly buries the Norn stone with Matt and admits she knows somehow this isn't goodbye. So there is a lot going on. This is the Matt Murdock funeral story, which we're gonna find out. Basically, Matt Murdock dies during Devil's Reign, and of course you're going to have.
Is that even news anymore? Doesn't Matt Murdock die in every storyline these days?
Just about, right? It does sort of feel that way, but. I really like this story. I sort of expected that we would have this story, but all the same, I still thought it was really interesting. Any thoughts you want to share on that?
No, I think you've covered most of this pretty well, actually, I think. So,
okay.
Thoughts on what particular part?
Well, just the story or what happened, the first sort of the first aftermath story of Devil's Reign.
So, I mean, what I liked about that one was the eulogy that's in the first one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The eulogy was really good. I thought that was interesting, and I feel for this woman who obviously still is coming in and helping and interested in Matt Murdock, even though he's moved on to the hot assassin chick and has basically, and yet does he still say he loves her and makes googly eyes at her later? Yes.
He does.
Which is probably even worse. So, yeah.
The thing I thought was most interesting about this is Reed Richards actually asked Foggy, why didn't you give the eulogy? And he basically just says, I couldn't. I would be a blubbering mess trying to give a eulogy. And so I thought it best for everyone if I just, bow out and let Kirsten do this instead. And I totally respect him for that. I totally get that.
No, that makes sense.
As far as the other two stories we had in Mayor for Hire, we see Luke Cage reflect on his past before his first press conference as mayor. During the opening statement, he tries to bring people together, and afterwards talks about the role of the Thunderbolts going forward. Because yes, as we found out during Fall and Rise, Thunderbolts are still a thing, so something's got to be done with it. And actually, in the final story, The Cleaning House, Luke Cage tries to recruit Monica Rambeau to lead the Thunderbolts and reform them from within. She turns them down, and it's suggested they should try asking Clint Barton next.
There you go.
I don't know if there's spoilers there or not. I have no idea if Cliff Barton ends up actually taking the role, but that's what we found in this story.
There you go. I will admit that because I didn't see any Daredevil content, I just kind of swiped through these and proceeded to the next one. So
well,
I'll take your word on it.
That's what happens, basically. So there we go. So as we continue, by September, the events of Devil's Reign have wrapped up and Daredevil Volume 7 starts. In it, we get the first 4 issues of a storyline entitled The Red Fist Saga. It opens with Matt posing as Mike, confronting Butch, and learning about Fisk's fate. Fate being that he's moved on, he's out going somewhere, and yes, this is Matt Murdock posing as Mike Murdock to a guy that knows Mike Murdock is dead. He then drops the act, and with Spider-Man's backing, he gives Butch a warning: rule like Fisk and the heroes will come. And we also find out actually something else interesting in that exchange is that Butch Ferris is now taking the name Fisk as well. So trying to be a little bit more like dear old dad.
Yeah, I find it interesting though that he comes back and he talks to the guy and says, hey, really, sorry you had to think I was dead. But actually, Matt came back from detox or whatever, and he was there, and your dad killed him, and I'm actually Mike. And the guy buys it. And he's he does sort of buy it, yeah. We can get this going. You can come and help me, and really, I'm trying to be, a kinder, gentler Kingpin, and we're going to do this without so much violence. And then Daredevil's like, you know what? I'm gonna punch you anyways and threaten you.
Yes.
Because even though you've just said you're going to do exactly what I'd like you to, I just came here to punch you. And so that's what he does.
He does sort of do that sometimes, I guess. So after this, before leaving the city, Matt finally trusts Peter enough to reveal his secret identity. He then races to stop Kirsten McDuffie from leaving town, only to miss her train as it explodes as it pulls away from the station, pulling him into this nightmare scenario orchestrated by an unnervingly calm Robert Goldman. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it might, because he's a former college friend of Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson. He was also the district attorney that he went to and negotiated the plea deal in which he went to prison the most recent time as Daredevil. And This guy's a little weird. We're
Yeah.
gonna talk about his thing because he seems like he's certified Looney Tunes.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. That is correct. I don't like it.
As we continue, Goldman claims that he's been shaping Matt's life all along, pushing him towards greatness through tragedy, revealing he may have caused Elektra's father to die, and the train bombing to reforge Daredevil into the best version of himself. Their rain-soaked clash ends with Goldman leaping away and turning himself in, while Matt ends up reuniting with a very alive Kirsten, who ends up confessing his love to her, but still keeps his true identity hidden. So yeah, these two fight. There's actually a second train that ends up exploding that he tries to help the driver of the train, and they're fighting and they're going at it. And then all of a sudden Golden's like, Kirsten might not be dead. And he goes back to the train station, and sure enough, Kirsten is very much alive and is like, hey, you're late. and he's like just flabbergasted and excited to see her. And he confesses his love for her, but not as much love as apparently for Peter Parker, because he didn't reveal who his secret identity was to her.
Yes, indeed. Which is probably just for the best. I mean, because he's already decided. I think he's decided at this point he's going to go off and marry Elektra and become the king of the new ninja tribe. So it's not a great time to be making plans with another woman,
Right.
So,
no, it's not. Yeah.
Such is the way.
Yes.
But this guy is. It's interesting too. If you remember, this is just about the time that Moon Knight was being messed with by Zodiac, who also was attempting to sort of
make him the
arrange
best
things
version,
to make him a better version of himself. Not in the past, but just in present events, by taking away all of his support group or whatever to get him back to being the crazy violent guy that he imagined he should be. But in this case, it is weird because theoretically this guy's been around Matt since college and has been sort of just affecting things. I love the fact that the pages, though, did you see there's different artists for each one of these pages? And a lot of them are people who had done comics from that generation of
Yes, this was that big 650th issue, and so we had all these former artists come back and showing various aspects of this, and it was very beautifully done.
Yep. So I did like also that Klaus Janson had one of them, and it's just they brought a lot of people back that it was kind of cool to just see again. So
yeah, definitely. So elsewhere in the story, Elektra and Stick are establishing a base near the Fist, where it originated. The Fist being this other ninja organization that was built up to take on the Hand. Meanwhile, Luke Cage stands his ground as mayor against the Stromwinds. Matt Murdock recruits Cole North for what's coming, and learns that the Hand is allied with the Stromwinds, excuse me. And we learn the Punisher is now leading the Hand from Akka, who is a former mentor of Elektra, while Elektra was a member of the Hand. So we get all sorts of interesting new people, kind of interfacing with some of the more recent characters and villains that have appeared in the Daredevil storyline. And it just sort of seems like a big mess.
She has a much better skincare regimen than Stick as well, because they both must be old as dirt, and yet she looks like she's 16.
Yes.
And he literally is wrinkles everywhere. So it's kind of odd. But so finding all sorts of new people and new locations and stuff like this as we go along here. So
yeah. So as the year ends, Matt and Elektra complete a brutal spiritual trial, defeating the lingering souls of the Hand. Styx seals the ceremony, declaring Matt and Elektra king and queen of the reborn Fist, as well as husband and wife, before calmly telling them, now let's get to work. And that's where the year ends, and we're going to find out what that work is next year in 2023. But it does appear that we have the Hand, the ninja assassin group that Matt Murdock once led and that Elektra once led, is now going to be fought by another group called the Fist that is also basically was created to stop the Hand, and Matt Murdock and Elektra are the king and queen of that now. So that's crazy.
Yes. It's a weird little marriage, but I guess it's legal in whatever part of the world they're in right now. So Stickers declared them man and wife. So that's all it takes.
So that's the year. We talked about a lot of stuff that happened outside of Devil's Reign, but I think we need to dive in and let's talk about Devil's Reign, because there's a lot that happens here, and really there's a lot that ends up happening as a result of what happens in Devil's Reign. This week's Spotlight Stories.
All right, Dwayne. So, you've decided to pick the middle issues of the story. Devil's Reign issues number 1 through 6, February to June of 2022. So this is essentially smack dab in the middle between the end of Volume 6 and the beginning of Volume 7. Tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
Yeah, so this is the big crossover event that takes the kind of fight between Wilson Fisk and Daredevil and turns it up to, I don't know, 15, 20 maybe. It is absolute craziness. And so let's dive in. Devil's Reign kicks off with Wilson Fisk storming into Hell's Kitchen, furious and unraveling. He waves a file that should expose Daredevil's secret identity, but it's blank. Someone's tampered with his mind, and Fisk responds the only way he knows how, tightening his grip on the city. He announces the Powers Act, which criminalizes superheroes and vigilantes and unleashes villain-staffed Thunderbolts units to enforce it. Arrests begin immediately. Moon Knight goes down first, while Daredevil, Captain America, and Spider-Man scramble to slow the tide. At the same time, Otto Octavius makes his move, arresting Reed Richards and Sue Storm and seizing Reed's lab, perhaps signaling that Fisk isn't the only mastermind with mayoral ambitions. This is a sort of crazy start to this, because it is basically Fisk going into Hell's Kitchen and just demanding to see Daredevil. And when Daredevil comes out, he's like, this file should have your identity and I can't read it. So you've messed with me and you're going to pay, and everyone's going to pay. And it starts out at 11 and just goes from there.
Yeah, and it's weird because this is the sort of thing that, how is everybody not freaked out about there are parts of newspapers that they can't read. There have to be entire documents, like reams of documents in courthouses that nobody can make out for some reason, that talk about how Matt Murdock was, on trial for being Daredevil, went to prison, was being hounded by photographers every day. So, and it's also weird because we yet again have Fisk at a point where he's married. They seem to be happy. He's almost ready to just be like, hey, I'm going to go off and just hang out here with my wife. And then he's at their vacation home, sees this stuff, and loses his beans because of Daredevil again.
So triggered, yeah. Yeah. And he's like, all right, honeymoon over. We gotta go back to New York because I gotta talk to the man about this. So you can imagine this sort of causes chaos, and as New York turns hostile, heroes scatter or go underground. Luke Cage and Jessica Jones clash with the Thunderbolts, and Luke's impassioned defense of heroes, which is caught on camera, plants a bigger idea. With Tony Stark's backing, Luke Cage ends up announcing his run for mayor, shifting the battle from rooftops to City Hall. Meanwhile, Otto imprisons Reed and Sue at the Myrmidon and begins experimenting with Kilgrave's powers. Kilgrave is in custody, and basically Fisk wants to use Kilgrave's powers to influence people to the point where he doesn't just want to be mayor now. He wants to be like president of the United States, and he wants to use Kilgrave's powers to do this. So he is enlisting Otto's help, and Otto's trying to help him, but Otto seems to be doing some stuff on the side that makes you think, oh, he might not actually be trying to do things just for Fisk here. He's got his own agenda as well.
Yes.
And then after all that, as part of this kind of rule to crack down on superheroes and vigilantes and stuff, the city becomes basically a surveillance state because Fisk deploys anti-crime drones throughout the city to keep track and like alert thunderbolts when vigilante or superhero activity is happening. Foggy Nelson ends up getting brutally silenced by Fisk as he's waiting for him in his office, and Daredevil watches allies fall or disappear left and right. It is really quite something. It just, like I said, it starts out at about 11 and then just kind of escalates from there. It is quite something.
So, and I just want to check, but am I correct that he cut off the purple man's finger and put it into his little cane, and that's how he's doing some of this stuff, by the way?
Yes.
That is what he did.
Is true. That is I don't know how he ended up getting it, but yes, he has like a finger of the purple man, and he's got it in his cane. And so he is sort of using that, I think, a bit of the purple man's powers to sort of orchestrate some of this stuff happening.
Yeah, I also find it crazy that even as he's doing this, he's like, the people want to vote for me. I'm not really doing anything wrong. This is just the same as people spending money to influence elections with commercials.
Right.
Putting the purple man in a big, some sort of mind control vat and then making him tell people to vote for me is no different than what every other politician does, right? He is so clinically unable to understand just how completely wrong he is. It's kind of hilarious sometimes.
Yeah. So as all this goes on, the mystery of Fisk's missing memory finally cracks. It is the Kilgrave's children who scrambled them. He figures this out. He actually inadvertently hits Typhoid Mary with the cane holding Kilgrave's finger, and it helps her remember some memories from her past. So he quickly goes to Otto and basically does the same thing and has his memory restored, and with it comes the truth of the secret identity of Daredevil, and he finally remembers Matt Murdock. And from there, everything accelerates. Fisk orders a ruthless strike to capture the Purple Kids. Casualties be damned, as he says. And when Otto drains the powers from the revived Kilgrave, Fisk abandons his election of New York entirely, and he's like, I'm going to be president now. Everything's going to be good. He actually releases Kilgrave and gives him one command: kill every superhero who's ever opposed them. And the result is total chaos. Thunderbolts, Avengers, Otto's superior heroes from other dimensions that he's been working on in Reed's lab, and a citywide horde of people under the control of Kilgrave's control collide in one massive, brutal showdown right in the middle of Hell's Kitchen. It is the battle to end all battles, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The way all of this starts ending up, and then, that really the kids have different powers than Kilgrave, which is why he wants them, because Kilgrave can kind of influence people, whereas the kids can literally actually change people. Kilgrave can make you do something you don't want to. The kids can make you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
And so
especially
that's
when they're together specifically. Yep. Yes.
Yep. So you've got all this stuff going on. And it is interesting to see just how many people end up in this fight when theoretically there aren't supposed to be any vigilantes wandering around New York at this point.
No, there's really not. And yet basically there's everybody. It is actually sort of crazy. So if this isn't enough, we have this brutal showdown going on. There is an emotional breaking point that happens. Wilson Fisk hiding in Matt Murdock's apartment, and Mike Murdock shows up, and Wilson Fisk mistakes Mike Murdock for Matt Murdock and actually murders him, mistaking him for Matt. And Kirsten McDuffie walking in on it, or the end of it at least, she's horrified. She calls Daredevil and tells him the lie that Matt Murdock is dead. Enraged, Daredevil abandons the fight, the big showdown fight, to hunt Fisk himself with the intent on killing him. Their confrontation explodes when Elektra intervenes, reminding Matt who he is, which is not an assassin, but a symbol. And at the same time, Kilgrave is finally stopped by his own son, Joe, with Luke Cage's help, ending the Purple Man's reign without becoming what he hates. Reinforcements arrive, the city begins to breathe again, and Fisk is finally taken down, if however briefly. So we have actually sort of all these fights. We had the big fight, and then we have some smaller fights that are sort of, on the outskirts of this. Fisk gets taken down by Elektra and Daredevil. Actually, Joe, one of Kilgrave's kids, with Luke Cage's help, takes down Kilgrave. The Avengers basically take down the Thunderbolts and some of the superior heroes, and basically everything sort of calms by the end of book 5 of this story. So we still have one book with some aftermath stuff, but this was like finally the first rest we get in this story, I think.
Sounds about right. Yeah, taken down briefly. That's about it, actually. The other weird thing is, though, that even with that, did they really have much for actual proof against Fisk? I mean, who? I don't know.
Not
Maybe
really.
There's
not
a lot
exactly.
of a lot of proof against Doc Ock. He's the one that kind of was. But in any case,
well, presumably he's going to
goes.
have to go to jail because he murdered Matt Murdock.
So how did that happen? How did Kirsten just stand there in the doorway, 20 feet away from him murdering a guy, and he just lets her go off and call the police? I mean,
I feel like she came in at the end, saw the aftermath of it, or the final moments of it, and then presumably ran away very quickly so as not to be the next victim of your current mayor.
All right.
That's the only way it makes sense.
Significant plot armor going on there, but all right. We'll take it.
It's kind of the end of book 5, the start of book 6 there at that point. So, in the aftermath of all this, Fisk is removed from power, though not without one last twist involving his son Butch and the shadowy Stromwinds, because basically Butch acts as the cop that is arresting Fisk, and actually Butch ends up, instead of bringing Wilson Fisk to jail, brings him to the Stromwinds. Yep. And they're like, well, we can get you out of this. It's no problem at all. I know you killed somebody. I know you tried to, blow up New York City, but we can take care of all this because that's how powerful and influential we are. You're just going to work for us, and we're going to actually put you in the White House like you want. But you're going to work for us. You're going to be our puppet. And basically Fisk tells him to go fly a kite. He's not willing to do this, and basically gets to leave. And
did he tell them to go fly a kite, Or did he try to crush their heads like melons?
he may have tried to, do it with violence. Tell him to fly a kite with violence, yes.
When next we see the Stromwyn guy, he's got like a permanent metal clutch thing on his arm because the right side of his body doesn't work any longer. So
yeah.
I think you put a definite pacifist spin on what happened.
Yes.
So
then a week later, Daredevil makes his choice. He leaves with Elektra to confront the Hand, stepping away from New York once more. And as Fisk and Mary quietly sail off into exile, Devil's Reign closes not with a victory, but with scars in a Marvel universe that it's changed forever. So that is Devil's Reign. And that's where we then pick up with the Devil's Reign Omega and what happens in Fall and Rise, and everything that's happening there. So this was a crazy story. There was so much going on. There was lots of other like stars of this thing, and I think more importantly, it's Fisk kills Matt Murdock, or at least he thinks he has killed Matt Murdock, and for all the times that they've gone head to head and all the times he's threatened to kill him, he actually did it this time.
I also, so with that, I mean, he killed a guy. He basically, we know he got into office by cheating in the first place and all this.
Yeah.
He sails off into the sunset with his beautiful bride.
Yep.
Are you okay with that?
As far as justice goes, no. There is not much in the way of justice and all that.
I mean, it literally was really disheartening that there's this idea that, well, Wilson did it for the right reasons, and he's maybe, he's got all of this anger at Murdoch, but now he's going to give it up, so we'll give him a sailboat and let him go somewhere. No! Dude needs to be in prison, or worse. He's just one of the worst people in the Marvel Universe, and I'm not okay with this. So... But nonetheless, that was tough.
If you were looking for justice for Wilson Fisk in this, you were sadly not given that.
The only redeeming thing is that we know he is such a miserable SOB that there's no way he will let himself have any peace either. So relatively soon, he's going to see something about Daredevil, lose his mind, and get right back into the dirt again. So we'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, so that is Devil's Reign. It was the big crossover this year, and I like I said, I think I liked this quite a bit more than I liked Shadowland. And the last big crossover that Daredevil was a focal point in. It does help that Daredevil's the good guy in this, as opposed to being the villain in it. I think that's probably part of it. But yeah, the fact that Wilson Fisk is able to leave this story without justice is sort of a rough part of it. Yep. But sometimes the bad guy does, in essence, not doesn't get brought to justice as a result of it.
There you go. It's the way it is. So, all right. So I got some questions for you. You ready for these?
Yes, let's do this.
Who's Matt Murdock in love with this year?
So Matt says that he's in love with Kirsten, and he says he's in love with Elektra during this year, though one believes him to be dead, and the other he is now married to. So I think Elektra's probably the one you would say that he was in love with this year, because she's the one that he actually marries.
You would hope, anyways. We'll see. Yes. We'll see how it goes. Who's our biggest villain of the year?
Oh, Wilson Fisk, without any doubt whatsoever.
Yep. It's not even one of those where Matt is kind of bad enough to maybe take over. Fisk is just literally the worst this year.
Yes.
Did we see Matt practicing any law this year?
There was no time in Devil's Reign for him to practice law this year.
No. Anyone know Matt's identity?
Spider-Man gets told the secret identity at the start of Volume 7. So him, definitely. I don't know that there were any others that jump out to me as learning the news this year.
No, and what's weird, evidently, is when you know it, then all your memories just come back. So once you get that, it just unlocks that whole. It's like I don't know, some sort of a quest accomplished or something, where all of their memories previously of their life with Daredevil come back. So then he remembers them being best buddies and everything else.
Right.
Daredevil's still a good guy this year.
So I said I think so. There are a lot of unknowns now, and this weird thing that he's doing with Elektra and the fist against the hand. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I could definitely be swayed that he wasn't necessarily the best guy.
I mean, not only is he doing the best he can, but in actual fact, he has inspired Elektra to be hopefully better. She seems to be killing less people, and intentionally so. And just in general, around the town, it's obvious he's got a lot of people who are on his side, thinking that he does more good than ill.
Yeah.
So, how about the Daredevil outfit? Any changes?
Nothing new there. Just the classic red suit that we all know and love.
Au contraire.
Oh?
In the first issue of Volume 7, doesn't he get the weird little ninja pants? I think his uniform changes.
Did it? I guess I didn't notice that it was that much different.
He's
that it
still
was
got
different.
the red tunic top, but now he's got like the same pants as the Hand and everybody has on the bottom. Maybe that was just his marriage togs. I don't know. But in any case, when they were fighting all of the bad guys, he did look a little different. Or the spirits of the Hand, he looked a little different, I thought. Anything new about Matt's past?
So we saw another perspective of Elektra's father dying and the circumstances surrounding that from Robert Goldman. When he was talking about that, we actually see a flashback of that, and we see about a page or two of panels with regards to that. And it was actually like Robert Goldman yelling, "They're killing the hostages," that made the snipers shoot into the building that ended up getting Elektra's father killed. And so that was kind of interesting.
It's almost like he's got a mutant power, sort of like Purple Man's in some ways. Or he's got the ability to control certain things. He calls himself a guardian angel, but really he's sort of this malignant force that goes around ensuring things are the way he wants for Matt's life. So
yeah.
Biggest moment of the year for you?
So the biggest moment to me, there is two of them. One, the first obviously is Wilson Fisk killing Matt Murdock, or at least he thinks he kills Matt Murdock, but it was actually Mike Murdock during the Devil's Reign run. That to me just actually was huge. And then Daredevil and Elektra resurrecting the Fist and getting married in the process at the end of the year. In issue 4 of Volume 7, I thought was also pretty big. And obviously it's going to set the stage for what's going to come in 2023.
Yeah, I think that the marriage has to be that obviously it wasn't exactly the Catholic marriage in a big church that you would expect for Matt Murdock, but that was a pretty important one. So that would make sense to me that would end up being the big moment of the year, I guess. So
yeah. All right, I think that covers the year for Daredevil. There was a lot here. I would recommend reading Devil's Reign if you have not read it. I think it was a pretty good story. Don't read it if you're hoping for Wilson Fisk to get justice throughout all of it. But beyond that, if you like a story that's got a lot of action and basically, like I said, starts off really, really fast paced and only gets faster as the story goes on, this is definitely one for that. And then I'm very curious to see where we go from here with the Fist and versus the Hand in 2023.
Yeah. And in Devil's Reign's defense, if you really are concerned about Wilson Fisk getting what's coming to him, you probably shouldn't be bothering to read like Marvel Comics at all, because
that is true.
He always seems to be back with more money and another wife that is willing to follow him into his crazy endeavors, and his life is continually better than Matt Murdock's, which is not fair.
Right, not fair at all. All right, let's wrap things up for this week. We got one more piece of business. Let's talk takeaway. This week's takeaway. All right, Dan, you said that it's really difficult now that we're getting so close to present day to have much of a takeaway, but we did want to note the sort of the changing sentiment of adaptations, specifically this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this was the year really where sort of like internet anger at a lot of different media really sorted to sort of boil over. And I think that was partly because just a lot of the stuff that's going on as far as social unrest and sort of, a lot of the divisions in our society got to the point where even comic book movies have to be infested by them, right? So
yeah.
Black Panther was politicized, and She-Hulk was politicized, Ms. Marvel was politicized. Because of that, you start to see a lot of sort of negativity towards some of these. But I think that that's one side of negativity. The other is that there were some really subpar efforts that came out this year.
Yeah.
I think that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, a lot of people did like that, but it was really confusing, and it had some strange things, and it again, the plot didn't make a lot of sense in some cases and the like, and everything else. Thor: Love and Thunder, the graphics were not finished when that movie came out. I think it looks a lot better now on Disney.
I was going to say, I think they actually did sort of a re-release sort of scenario where they improved some of the graphics. I think about like that boy's head, the disembodied head that he gets sort of some information on that progresses the plot about 2/3 of the way through. That was like a laughing stock on the internet for like the first 2 weeks of its release.
It was
and then they sort of
Murdock worthy.
Yeah. And so they were trying to, they sort of upped they resent it to theaters, slightly improved, but it still doesn't look good. I mean, if you think about what was happening early on in the MCU when they were only doing like 1 or 2 movies a year, or some of the big efforts that they were doing, the graphics hold up a lot better than some of the more recent outings.
20 years later, there's still nothing that really looks better than the first time that Tony Stark takes off in the armor.
Yeah.
And that's kind of sad in some ways. But in any case, Morbius came out this year. We had, some really good efforts and the like. But I think there were enough duds.
Yeah,
and,
Black
Adam. There was Black Adam that came out and the like, that nobody was at this point able to still go, the Marvel or DC logo is a sort of real stamp of quality. And so this year, you still got nearly $1 billion on a lot of these movies. But that's not going to be the case in the next couple of years. Now we've got films I really like that maybe get 400 million instead.
Yeah, this, I think, is the year where people sort of swore off, the MCU. They're like, they went to one or more of these movies, or they went to, Black Adam on the DC side, and they were like, this is it. I didn't enjoy this. I was not entertained, and I'm not going to give these people my money again.
Well, and the other thing is, even if you were entertained, I think this was, when we were looking at this at the end of the year, most of these shows, Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk, were they all 6 episodes, 10 episodes? How many were they?
Moon Knight was 6. I think Miss Marvel was like 7 or 8, and then I know She-Hulk was 9 episodes.
Okay, so 15, 20 some plus 4 or 5 movies. I seem to remember that the idea was that if you just looked at them over the year, essentially we got like the equivalent of one new show or movie every other week for the entire year, if you'd spread them out. And that's just exhausting for a lot of people who are not diehard fans. So
right.
I think that the takeaway may, as much as anything, just be oversaturation and sort of like questions on quality really hurt the brand this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And they still haven't recovered from it.
No, they have not.
All right. And on that note, I think that is going to wrap it up for us for this week. We'd like to thank you all for joining us. If you're new to the podcast, please consider subscribing on your podcast player of choice. That way you'll get each new episode as soon as it's released. If you've already subscribed, we'd appreciate if you'd shared the show via social media or leave us a review. That'll help other new listeners find the show that much easier. Now, whether you're new to the podcast or you've been with us from the beginning, we'd love to get your thoughts on this week's show. Did you read Devil's Reign when it came out or read it again recently? We'd love to get your thoughts on that. Or if you want to share your thoughts on one of the movies or TV shows that came out this year, you can send us those comments via email. That address is comments@comicsovertime.com, or you can reach out to us on Blue Sky. We're at Comics Overtime there. It's going to be interesting. We had this big change this year. I don't really remember what was going on in 2023 as far as adaptations. We've got an interesting story that basically is the only story in Daredevil. The Red Fist saga basically is the story for 2023 that we're going to be talking about for Daredevil. So next year's discussion is going to be interesting, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, it's getting kind of weird because things are compressing now in terms of really being able to take a look at the long term. But Daredevil's been really interesting. I will note that there's going to be coming up a series. I'm gonna be interested. How far along in Daredevil are you?
I'm a few issues into volume 8.
Okay. I'm interested to talk about how you're liking the stuff going into 2024 and onward, because that is also, some people have really liked it and some people have not as much. We might have some interesting things going on there. So,
okay.
See how it goes.
All right. And on that note, until next week, take care, everybody.
See you later, folks.